the topic of this post is going to be how to improve practice by applying motor learning principles.
Yeah.
But I think to start out, it would be best if you could give a little bit of your background, who you are, what you're doing, and kind of how you stumbled across this science, and then we'll get into more of the motor
Okay.
learning stuff. So.
All right. Background, gosh. I've been playing volleyball for 50 years, working at USA Volleyball for 30 years, and in 1975, about 40 years ago, I got in touch with a guy named Carl McGowan, who is professor emeritus now of motor learning from BYU. And in talking to him, that's when I went from traditional coaching, because I started coaching collegiately in 1970 at Colorado College. And I was doing the men and the women's programs. Pretty traditional, I'm sure, looking at things back then. Then I went to a couple summer camps in 73 where got exposed to some higher level coaching from California as well as from around the world, actually. And sort of started thinking, well, then that means this camp probably should change these things. And then Carl accelerated it in 75 when he started to show us even the science back then that was going on in motor learning and the violations that we were making in some of the stuff. And when it really comes down to it, it's all about specificity as a word. The basics is specificity, and you can call it quits there. But I coached here for I don't know how many years. I'm still coaching. Beach, Paralympic, silver medal or bronze medal in the Paralympic side, gold medal in the beach side. And then, my passion has always been coaching coaches.
Yeah.
Because of the impact. In fact, that's why I didn't go into college coaching, even though I was in there for a little while. It was because I could, I only felt I was working with a few people then, maybe summer camp, and that was it. But by coaching coaches, I was able to impact, a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then you got to stay on top of things. So, luckily we're connected to the USOC and we're connected to the International Volleyball Federation. I served on the, like we say in a lot of these things, this is science, not opinions. This is facts, not, beliefs and stuff. And I know that, maybe people listening in will go, yeah, but I'm a member of the Flat Earth Society, and I think there's 5,000 members of that group. That I'm pretty sure the Earth is round. The science tells me that, but 5,000 people choose to think that the Earth is flat, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
Yeah.
We just know that by doing these things in our sport, specifically in the men's side, that we've been able to hold our own against the world. In fact, Trev, I don't think you may even know this fact. Maybe we talked about it, but there's 420,000 girls that played high school volleyball this year.
Mm-hmm.
They get 15,000 plus scholarship opportunities when they go up to the collegiate level. And it's the number 3 sport for them. Number 1 is track and field around the U.S. Number 2 is basketball, closely followed by volleyball, which is well ahead of soccer and softball for girls.
Mm-hmm.
So then you go, okay, you got NBA basketball, you've got, NC2A basketball, 15 scholarships for there. The women have 15,000 scholarships. How many scholarships are there for men's volleyball in the United States if there's 15,000 for girls? What do you think?
I would assume it would be a lot less just because it's not as popular of a sport. So I would guess 5,000. Okay,
5,000 is almost the exact average. But my job is to deliver facts. So the facts are that there's about 120.
Wow.
Total. They only get given on a team, the maximum D1 scholarships is 4.5. They can't even field a team 6 with scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
And we've only got about 20 some odd D1 programs. So then you go, okay, 120 to 15,000. How many gold medals have the women won? And the answer is 0. They've won silver, 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 and a bronze. Okay, with those tiny paltry number of scholarships and no pro league in America. There's pro leagues in Brazil, pro leagues in Russia, huge sports in these other countries. How many gold medals have the men come up with? And the answer is 3.
Yeah.
And a bronze medal. So how is that possible?
Yeah.
And the answer is the men, since Carl got involved in 75, have been training according to the science and the motor learning research and applying that immediately to how we train. And the women kind of train like the Asians have, but it's very coach controlled. If you go to a volleyball practice, a lot of times you'll see the players average a couple hundred contacts a practice, but then one person is getting more contacts than anybody else in the gym. And that person in our sport is the coach.
Yeah.
And it's just the most frustrating thing. And in our sport, they do it all the time.
Yeah.
And, it's just stealing contacts per hour from the players. And
yeah.
In fact, people think, I got to do this because I'm the coach and it's my job.
Yeah. And that's what their coach did for them when they were playing.
And that's teaching the way they're taught.
Yeah.
So, when you get down to the basics, as you've asked about motor learning, we know that the transfer from what is being done in a skill is very little if it's not specific, if it's not game-like.
Yeah, and I think specificity is the key from what I understand and what you said earlier.
It's not just the key, it is the cornerstone. It's probably both cornerstones, or all 4 cornerstones, really.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get back to random versus blocked, it's because of specificity in no small part. When you get to transfer or block mass versus distributed practice, well, yeah, but I'm getting more contacts per hour, which means I'm doing the specific thing.
Yeah. And so when we talk about specificity, what we're saying is how similar practice is to a game, correct?
Practice and the actual, I guess you could say practice of the drills. I don't even like to say drills anymore. I call them drills. It needs to be as game-like as possible. And we see in my sport that, for example, people teach passing in front of the net so that they get good at putting the ball back and forth to each other, which has zero value to serve receiving, which is a thing comes rocketing over the net, and before it clears the net, you got to know where to be, and then you got to send it a little distance and tap it over to your setter. Mm-hmm. That's not back and forth ever. And so practice, if you walked into 90% of the coaches' gyms, they'd say, oh, no, we're learning passing. This is important. Look at, they're showing ball control. They can, but it has nothing to do with the game. You don't ever bump the ball back to where it came from. Yeah. But we do it a lot.
I mean, I think the same is true in any sport. If you look at how people traditionally practice basketball, a lot of times they're in a gym alone, shooting with no defense.
No defense, exactly.
Spin the ball to themselves, and it's a totally different thing than a game when there's 5 people trying to steal the ball from you and there's a hand in your face. So.
Exactly. So the 2-on-2 basketball just gives you more contacts per hour, which is how you learn. We know that you don't learn a skill by watching.
Yeah.
You get an idea as to the goal, but you don't learn a skill by watching. And my 2 best examples of that is, as far as complexity, how did you learn to ride a bike? Did your mom hire a bike riding coach?
No.
Did she send you to bike riding summer camp up in Lander? Did she put you through bike riding drills? Did she do a single bike riding drill? And then you finally get to say, well, did you do bike riding progressions? Because it's pretty complex. You can die riding a bike. So did you pedal right-footed 20 times and then pedal left-footed and then put the 2 together? You don't do any of that. You ride the bike.
Yeah.
And so with my kids, just having gone off to college, it wasn't that long ago that probably you even learned how to drive. So you've sat in your mom's car for 16 years watching her drive. When you got behind the wheel, did you know how to drive? No. You didn't know how to drive until you put your foot on the pedal and went, whoa, and felt the wheel and went, whoa. Now, you might learn you might have learned how to go, damn it, or something like that, because you've seen your mom do that. But you didn't know how to drive until you drive. So you got to do it, and you can't watch it. So what does that mean to motor learning is that you need to be balancing game life with the contacts per hour. I could sit there and do a wall drill and go brrr, and rip off a whole shitload of contacts, but it doesn't teach them how to serve receive. So we know in developing a skill, whether you want to call it game-like or not, that random training is superior to blocked. Vastly superior, both in problem-solving new situations, but perhaps more important, to retention. And I think that's what's been, just in the last 10 to 15 years, they've been not only seeing if you learn it that day better, but testing them 7 days and 7 weeks out to see how much you remember.
Yeah.
And in all cases, random training promotes far superior retention. Now, that means we need to train game-like. I mean, I don't think any point in basketball is ever the same as any other point scored. And the same thing happens in volleyball.
Yeah.
It's never the same. Yet what Schmidt said brilliantly, I'm working on a blog on this one. He said, are you practicing for practice or are you practicing for performance? If you're practicing to play better 5 days from now and not to look good in practice, then you need to be random. You need to be not blocked in any way, shape, or form. You need to be chaotic. You need to be game-like. You need to be shorter drill sets, mass versus distributed.
And that all goes back to specificity, making it
goes 100% back to the cornerstones of specificity.
And real quick, if you could give an example of sort of a random practice versus block practice, maybe an example of each, just for the people that aren't familiar with those terms.
Well, in our sport, we often put a ball cart in zone 5, kind of in left back, and we put the setter up in the perfect spot, and the coach will throw, 200 balls to the setter, and they almost all land right on the same spot of the kid's head. But in the game, that ball gets passed from that spot on the court and arrives perfectly to that setter once out of every 70 times.
Yeah.
And the other 69 times you're running around over here and over there and over there and trying to front set it or back set it, and it's getting served from here and the ball comes in on this angle. Now it gets served to here and the ball comes in on this angle, and you have to front set it and back set it. That's game-like.
Yeah.
Game is completely random, and yet our drills and our tradition, we want to make them, look good in practice.
Yeah.
Again, they look good in practice. Yeah, but that's because they've only done this one angle, yet the ball comes from there once out of every 50 times, and you got to get good at the other 49 areas.
Yeah.
And random, of course, means that you change it all the time, which is like the game, rather than make it be blocked, which is in a row, the same set occurring, not even a back set choice, just the same front set off of the same throw, and the height of the ball is the same.
Yeah.
That's very blocked. But if you take specificity and keep it in the word game-like, I think the first place I saw this happen in basketball, when Peter was working with the Oklahoma Thunder on this, think game-like in free throw shooting. You get fouled, you shoot 1 + 1, you shoot 1 or you shoot 2, and then how long until you shoot another free throw?
Could be a long time.
Could be the next day.
Yeah, seriously. But when we practice, it's in basketball and volleyball. It's like, okay, we're going to practice free throws, and you'll shoot 50 in a row, right?
It's just not. You need to shoot 53 throws, but you need to do a bunch of things, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 minutes of something, then come back, shoot 2 free throws, and then go off and do a bunch of other things, then come back and get really good at shooting 2 free throws after you do a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
That's game-like, and that's specific, and that's how players need to practice, because that's what they do in a game. So the last part of this loop, that's skill set. And we also know one last thing on skill, that you want to go with speed first and accuracy second. Some fascinating things in other sports with Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus, they both were told, I hit the ball as hard as I could, they said. I found the fairway later.
Yeah.
Andre Agassi said the same thing. I was taught at the Bolletary Tennis Academy. Hit the ball as hard as I could and find the court later. When you're young and you're not worried about winning as much, I just told my son, who hits the ball really hard. He plays at Princeton now, and he's, junior national team level / All-American this last year / led the nation in kills per set as a freshman. Cody was young, and I said, just swing as fast as you can. And he, in matches, would hit out. Say, I lost the match. Because you're 14, I don't care.
Yeah.
You need to learn to swing fast so that when you get better, you swing fast and it goes in. In football, I see. You look at what Chip Kelly's doing.
Yeah.
I'm liking that a lot. Why? Because he's speeding things up and still staying as accurate as possible.
And I see it as a great example of motor learning, because what do? They put their opponents in a position where the game is totally unlike anything that they could have practiced, and the results speak for themselves.
These are all motor programs based on the science of how do you learn a motor skill. So the most important and third and final place in this triangle is feedback. Mm-hmm. And I like to use the word feed forward more lately, just because we find that feedback is sort of seen as criticism. Feed forward, where you guide them to think about what they should do the next time, isn't seen as criticism, and it's something you control, the next point. Mm-hmm. Not, that's great, but that point's passed. But most coaches spend their whole life telling you what not to do. Mm-hmm. We know that feedback should be very specific, and you can't be probably ever too much specific. It's the more you are, the better you are as a teacher. Mm-hmm. I think John Wooden, they clocked him at about 76% of his phrasing to his athletes with specific feedback. Mm-hmm. And we know that when you figure it out, it's better than if I tell you what to do. Intrinsic learning, the retention, there's that word again, is vastly superior to extrinsic learning, where I tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. How did you learn to ride a bike? You figured it out.
Yeah.
How long has it been since you've ridden a bike? Maybe 5 years. Can you get on a bike and ride it?
Yep.
In a heartbeat. Boom. The retention is really strong when you figure it out. Well, it may take a while in sport. So the phrase that we're using there is called guided discovery. So guided discovery means I coach Socratically, and I just spend my time asking you questions. Which foot should be forward? And then this couples with the principle that I blogged about a few years ago. The player who knows why beats the player who knows how. And Emerson, in his great quote, says, the man who knows how will always have a job. The man who knows why will always be his boss. So I want my kids to know why. And so I have to guide their discovery and say, well, which foot should be forward? My left. Well, if we put your left foot forward, what will happen to the ball if you make an error? Will it tend to go that way or that way? Well, that way. Well, which is better mistake? Should it go that way or that way? Well, that way. So what would happen if you put your right foot forward? Are you open to your team? Oh, yeah, I'm open to my team. If you make an error, will it tend to go tight to the net or off the net? It'll go off the net. Exactly. So which foot do we put forward? Oh, well, I'm going to put my right foot forward. Show me. That took 30 seconds or more versus me extrinsically telling you, put your right foot forward, because I'm the coach. But here's the thing. When I tell you what to do, the retention is like 10 times worse.
And you'll end up having to tell them that hundreds of more times.
A whole bunch of times. So by guiding them to figure it out themselves, which takes a little longer, and rewarding them when they figured it out, high-fiving them or whatever. Then we get players who are able to do coaching without your eyes on them.
Yeah.
Because they can figure it out themselves. To get good, you got to get good when I'm not looking at you.
Yeah.
And that means that you need to know how you learn motor skill and compete, and you do random, and you make positive errors rather than negative. That's a big one in skill development for me. That's not necessarily inherent within motor learning. It's in attempting to win more points. In volleyball, you can serve into the net and you can serve out long, and they're both errors.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to serve in. But which mistake is what we call a positive error? Every ball that goes out long, they might touch it. The line judge might call it in. And almost equally important, in practice, when I serve out on your mom's team, the player has to go before it crosses or as it crosses the net. I think it's out. I'm going to let it go. Oh, I was right. They learn something when you serve out. When you serve it in the net, nothing's been learned.
Yeah.
So they're both errors, but I always want you to err over the net. But in our culture, again in volleyball, we pepper, so we hit down, and we ball spike, so we get good at hitting down. So we develop getting good at hitting into the net, when in reality we want to hit it over the net or too far over the net.
Yeah.
So every skill has a good mistake and a bad mistake, and probably in basketball too.
Something kind of interesting for me and also pretty scary is like a lot of the things that you've touched on, intrinsic learning, creating chaos, randomness, and all of those things, those kind of go against like traditional methods of coaching regardless of the sport.
Because they're practicing to look good in practice, not to perform.
Yeah.
And that's why Schmidt probably got asked, his book, Motor Learning Performance Principles to Practice is probably in its 5th edition now. And it's the first book I'd buy, if I were trying to figure out what to do. He was here at the USOC talking to, 32 Olympic sports coaches, and they'd say, what about this drill? And they'd hear it and see that it was blocked and not game one. And he goes, well, are you practicing for practice? Are you practicing to look good in performance? You guys are Olympians. You're trying to win medals 2 years from now and remember what is being taught, not look good for today's practice. Now, we do struggle in my sport with athletic directors who want you to do drills and less chaotic games like queen of the court and speedball and all these other fast, small-sided games that teach a lot. Athletic directors are going, well, you're just playing games. You're not training. And so we joke about creating a couple drills that are like AD1 and AD2, and you're there playing queen of the court and chaotic, and in walks the AD. You guys, AD1. And you go into some really cool drill that looks like control, and okay, the AD's gone. Now we can go back to training this way.
Yeah. We had the same thing happen with us in our program with some parents. Because, we try to apply a lot of these principles to the things that we do.
Hang on a second, though. Do you try or do you?
We do. We try to do...
No.
We do everything different, and everything is game-like as possible. And it does get out of control and crazy. And we had a couple parents, after one of the first sessions, come to me and say, what are we doing? Are the kids learning anything? And I just said, be patient, because we're at each place for 2 weeks. And these are the same parents 2 weeks later that are like, what did you guys do? My kid is amazing. And it's, you just step back and let them play and put them in positions where they can learn on the fly and create chaos and all of these things. And it's kind of magic, the game will teach them.
It does. The game does teach the game. And, that's one of the strengths that we've always had in basketball, the kids coming off the playgrounds of New York that were doing incredible things, and it's not that technique isn't important. I'm going to say, for lack of a better term, that you probably could teach me how to dribble really well technically.
Yeah.
And I understand how to dribble technically right. But then when you put me in the chaos of the game and the pressure, I may not do it at the right place at the right time. We see this in volleyball all the time. That doesn't mean I don't know the technique.
Mm-hmm.
So when players do things technically wrong, I often say, Trev, show me without the ball, or in your case, probably show me without any pressure what it should have looked like. And if they show you good form and pressure, without pressure, they know the technique. Okay, they just have to learn to read better. You know, the two most important skills we think in volleyball are reading and learning. So your talk here, we're talking about how do you learn?
Mm-hmm.
What does the science say? How do I learn? So that's why I teach it to the kids. So they understand the principles of learning a skill. You know, I think you're right. The chaos is fun, game-like, but it's really how you learn. And the faster you can do it, the harder the pressure is on the other team because they're used to being trained at probably a more technical, slower speed. You know, I mean, that's why fast breaks are pretty cool in basketball. I love a team that fast breaks. and a team that puts full court pressure, because traditionally, after you score, they back up and let you come up half the court. That's not the way I'd be playing. I'd be pressuring you from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Because I want you to not have that chance to do what you practice, which is train without a ball, without pressure, for half the court. I want you to do something you're not as good at, compete against me with pressure the whole court. And yeah, sometimes they get away and they score a point, but most of the time you probably stop them or break their rhythm and screw things up. Again, I'm not a basketball coach. I coach lacrosse. I coach volleyball. In lacrosse, what you said about pressure, the tradition, throw the ball back and forth.
Yeah.
Not when I train. Somebody's pressuring you every time you get ready to throw a ball because that's what happens in the game.
Yeah. I think that's the cool thing about these principles are things that can be applied to any sport, and you see examples everywhere in soccer, volleyball, basketball.
Right.
To me, that's the most interesting thing is if we can share this packages and get this out to other coaches, and they can, try to implement these things. I think that's
they can't try.
They will.
And you know why I pick on try, right?
Why?
Gives somebody an excuse to not do it.
Yeah.
If you told me, party at your place at 8, and I said to you, I'll try and be there. What did I really tell you?
You're probably not coming.
No, I'm not coming. It's totally different than if I said, party at 8? I'll be there, Trev. That's a totally different response. The first one lets me bail.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say to a kid, try, you're giving them a chance to bail. Now, I don't think you can do it 10 times out of 10, and that's not my expectation. When I say do this, I'm going to say, we're going to set a goal, 1 out of 10. Go. We just did 2 out of 10. That's awesome. The next time, let's see if we can do 3 out of 10. And, that goal setting is a big part of development and measuring yourself and things like that. But I'll never say try because, Yoda knows it. You either do it or you don't.
Yeah.
And so I'm really sensitive to try. In my feedback, I'm really sensitive to the word don't, because you can't teach a negative. So every cue word is never negative. It's always positive. What you should do. And if you see somebody do something wrong, it's not don't swan. It's fly like a superhero. Because you can do it this wrong, and you can do it this way wrong, and you can do it this way wrong. They're all wrong. I don't care about what I want. Show me this. Mm-hmm. And then that's what I'm looking for. And now I'm looking for a 10 out of 10. Not try to do it. So try, don't, but. That's a really cool room, that painting in the background there in your place. Really cool painting.
Thanks.
But what's coming?
I'm ready for something bad.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I compliment you, and then I slam the door on. You can't hear the compliment.
Yeah.
If you say, that's really cool, what you just did, and most humans can still hear what you said positive. Kids don't care how much you know about basketball, volleyball, till they know how much you care about it. You coach people. You don't coach players. You don't coach. One of my favorite things is to say, what do you coach? And if you said basketball, I'd go over and get a basketball, put the basketball in your lap. I'd stand back and say, show me how good of a coach you are. You just said you coach basketball. Well, there's a basketball. No, you don't coach basketball. You coach people. You don't even coach performers. You coach people first and know them and get them to trust you and believe in them and know all sorts of things about them. And then you turn them into performers. That's the second part. But first is knowing the people. Mm-hmm. You talked about resources. I've already mentioned the one best book, Motor Learning and Performance, Principles to Practice. After that, I would always make sure I was visiting the talentcode.com blog and that I had read the Talent Code. Maybe more importantly to most coaches, I'd be reading his other book that I helped him with called The Little Book of Talent.
Yeah.
That's almost more important, at least from a player-parent point of view. I think Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, is really important because her stuff is sort of education-based, which is learning. I'll close with two things that I've seen. Recently, I wrote a blog about 3 or 4 years ago called I'd Love to Watch You Play. And recently, I've seen 2 other people make big deals in their sports blogs about this concept of the most important thing as a parent you can say to a kid is, I'd love to watch you play. It is. That's really simple. What do you say when you get in the car? I'd love to watch you play. And if the kid wants to talk to you, great. If not, shut up. This is about leadership development, not about winning games. It's about developing your kid's character and not about winning games, and developing the people, as I said earlier, the person, not about winning games. So I love that phrase, that I just say all the time to my kids. I love to watch you play, because it's true. I love to watch you play. The second one is to challenge your listeners, to never be a child's last coach. What does that mean? Just that, to never be a child's last coach. That's how you measure yourself. So I was down in New Mexico this summer doing a clinic for the state of New Mexico, and a coach that coaches football came up and told a great story. So this guy was asked as he was retiring after 32 years of coaching football, what his record was. And he sits there and he goes, well, I don't know, I think about 4,220 and 210. And the goes, what the heck are you talking about? You coach football. What do you mean for? He goes, oh, you're talking about games. I was talking about athletes. They kept playing football, loved the game, 4,100 whatever. I lost about 200. They quit playing football after I coached them. So my blog on that is called Never Be a Child's Last Coach. I don't care if you choose to leave volleyball and go to basketball, but I do care that you stay in athletics and health and activity. And we see so many coaches drive kids away from sport. It makes me proud. And so I don't know my record, but I know it's been about 12 years since a kid left volleyball after I coached him. Every other kid plays the next year. That's how you judge how good you are as a teacher. Awesome. So, enough?
Yeah, thank you so much for this.
Sure. Yeah, it's been fun. Good way to spend a Friday afternoon.
So I'm going to put this up and send it out to the people, and we're going to talk to Carol next week, and I think that'll be a good one too.
All right.
Have a good weekend.
And usavolleyball.org is where my blog is, and Grassroots is where all my stuff is, underneath the Grassroots button.
Yep, I'm going to put the links to everything on the post.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Coach. See you.
Thanks much.